Kamala Harris's political career is over. Gavin Newsom is still pushing to remove your representatives by redrawing the lines in California. And the LA Olympics in 2028 might be vetoed by voter backlash. All that and more coming up on this episode of the California Underground podcast, starting right now. What's going on, everybody? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the California Underground podcast, the most trusted podcast for all things California politics. I am your host, Phil. We have a ton of stories to get to tonight, including Kamala Harris's political career is over. Gavin Newsom is trying to steal your representative by redrawing lines and pushing for a special election coming up in just a couple of months. San Diego has entered another bad real estate deal when it comes to 101 Ash Street. And finally, the LA Olympics might be vetoed by voters and their backlash over venues. So before we get started, if you haven't already, make sure you like, share, subscribe, review, all of that stuff. It helps spread the show and helps people find out more about us. Let's get into our first topic of the night. America, we may have just been unburdened by what has been. Kamala Harris's political career is over. Yes, Kamala Harris, who was vice president, U.S. senator, attorney general, all of those things, all of those accomplishments will probably go off to be a footnote in history, someone who lost to Donald Trump, who ran for about 107 days for president of the United States. Her political career is effectively over as of this past week. If you didn't hear the news, she did turn down or decline running in the governor race for California. So thank goodness to all of us here in California that Kamala Harris will not be running for governor of California. But more importantly, I think this shows that her political career is basically done. And we're going to get into that. They asked President Trump his thoughts on the fact that Kamala Harris didn't want to run in the California gubernatorial race. And here's his thoughts.
No, not you.
Mr. President, Kamala Harris, as you know, is not running for governor of California. She's not going to do it. What do you see in her political future, sir?
Well, she can't speak. She can't talk. She can't do an interview. I thought it was a very strange campaign that we had. But, you know, I had two of them. We were up by like this massive number of points on Biden, and they said, let's change to Kamala. Nobody knew who Kamala was. Nobody knew her last name, Harris. They said, we're going to get Vice President Harris. Everyone said, who the hell is Harris? They only knew her by the first name. But no, I thought she was a terrible candidate. Look, don't forget, she didn't really get the nomination. I mean, that whole nomination was strange. She was the first one out. You know, she took a good amount of points with her when she announced, but nobody knew her. And once they got to know her, she dropped out very shortly after she started. And she started with a pretty good, you know, she was like in second or third place. But I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't call her a skilled politician. Would you?
She's also coming out with a book. Any plans to buy it?
I don't know. Yeah, I think I'm going to buy it. I'd love to see it. No.
I love to see President Trump reading Kamala Harris's book like on Air Force One. Just being like, this is false. I don't remember this. This isn't true. Nope, this is a lie.
I'd find it. Look, I find everything in politics interesting. I sort of enjoy politics. She wasn't a skilled person. You know, you have skilled politicians, really skilled politicians, and then you have some that aren't. And she was put in a very tough position, I think. She did have a 6-week honeymoon. They told me, the pros said, you know what, she's going to have a 6-week. And she did. She was like untouchable in terms of everybody thought great. But she didn't do any interviews or anything, which was strange. Not even friendly interviews with friendly reporters like her right there, really friendly reporter. And you know what happened? People said, what's wrong with her? Why isn't she doing? She made a mistake. She should have done interviews. She didn't run a great campaign, but we beat Biden, and then we had to beat, nobody's beaten two. I had to beat two. That's like, Dana White, the great Dana White, has a fight, and he has a fighter that's getting the hell knocked out of him. They say, well, let's take him out and put somebody else in. Didn't seem fair to me at the time, but where are we? We're in the White House. So, I mean, so it worked out.
Very serious question.
Now, Mr. President, I mean, it's harsh to say that Kamala Harris was not a skilled politician. I mean, she was Attorney General, and then she was U.S. Senator, and then she became Vice President. So I don't, it might be a little harsh to say that she's not a skilled politician and that she's not a good speaker. I mean, that might be going a little too far.
My mother she would give us a hard time sometimes, and she would say to us, I don't know what's wrong with you young people. You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context of all in which you live and what came before you. So all of this is part of the work of this group.
Okay, duly noted. Well, the reason I say that her career is basically over is because this was really, I think, her last shot to run for something that she probably would have had a good chance of winning. As scary as that is, Kamala Harris had a good chance of winning as California governor. She was polling ahead of everyone else. A lot of the Democrats, mostly because of name recognition. I mean, if you ask people who are running for governor right now as Democrats, most people wouldn't be able to give you more than one or two names. The fact there's like 6 already who are running shows you that it's a crowded field, and Kamala Harris was the one with the most name recognition. She was polling ahead just based on that name recognition. But I think other numbers were showing her that these numbers were not going to play out favorably to her. So a lot of people were speculating she turned down the run for California governor because she was pivoting to 2028 and she wanted to go back and run for the White House. However, that's not good news for Kamala Harris either. So what you see here are poll numbers for Kamala Harris, her approval ratings. And if you can see on March 1st, it says 35.1%. And then as of August 4th, 21.1%. So she has dropped precipitously in her approval rating. She has continued to take nosedive after nosedive after nosedive. She's just not popular anymore. There are other Democratic candidates in 2028. Yes, one of them we know is Gavin Newsom, comes from our state. Pete Buttigieg, there's other Democrats who are rising. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. They're all rising and being a little bit more popular or a lot more popular than Kamala Harris. So now that she's turned down running for governor of California, and 2028 looks like it's a long shot because she's completely unpopular amongst her own Democrats, there is really nowhere else for her to go. I mean, that's basically it. You were vice president. There's really nowhere else to go unless you want to run and be a House representative or something like that. But most of the time you don't go down in politics. You try and get up to the next rung. So that's why I say the outlook does not look good for Kamala Harris right now. Now, she talked about this book. She talked on Stephen Colbert, a show that's getting canceled. So 2 people talking about how their careers are basically over, Stephen Colbert and Kamala Harris, whose careers are basically coming to an end. She talked about this book that she came out with 107 days or is publishing. And her old running mate and her old boss, well, at least the camp behind her old boss, I shouldn't say he because I don't know if he knows what's going on, they came out a little forceful about what might be in that book. And they came out and said from the Biden camp, this is from Mark Halperin, who has his own podcast. It says, quote, if the Biden people feel threatened, you will hear stories about Kamala Harris as vice president that will not make her look good, Halperin urged. It's not like they're at war currently, but I'm telling you, if Joe Biden feels threatened, if his people feel threatened by her, this is going to escalate in a big way, he added. Halperin further asserted that the Biden inner circle pulled out all the stops, quote, in trying to help her to do the job of vice president. They gave her every opportunity, and they found that in some instances that she has screwed up or emphasized. So Biden camp not holding back. I bet it's more like Jill Biden is actually the one who's threatening Kamala Harris if she has bad stuff to say about Joe Biden in her new book. So she's burned all bridges. California governor is not going to happen. She's not running for that. She can't run for president in 2028. She's immensely unpopular, even in her own party. she might be burning bridges with her old boss, Joe Biden. So where does Kamala Harris go from here? I actually don't have an answer. I don't know where Kamala Harris goes from here. I guess she just becomes like another Hillary Clinton where she does speeches and stuff like that. There was this article. I want to take this back to California and the gubernatorial race that is happening. This is from the San Francisco Chronicle, who you would think the San Francisco Chronicle, she was from San Francisco. She was the district attorney in San Francisco for a while. They were pretty harsh on her, and they said Kamala Harris isn't the only one who should drop out of the California governor's race. Harris's Wednesday decision, which caps months of will she or won't she speculation, means the long list of ambitious politicians angling for California's top job won't have to campaign against one of the most well-known Democrats in the country. Polling data published earlier this month suggested she would have been California's top choice if she threw her hat in the ring. Goes on to say, for many politicians, the prospect of an all but guaranteed electoral win is irresistible. Historically, this has meant that even arcane, unglamorous roles, such as that of California Insurance Commissioner, are highly sought after, not necessarily because of the job itself, but because they've seen as safe vehicles for political posturing and stepping stones to higher office. And there's a couple of those right now here in California. Ricardo Lara, I think, is one an insurance commissioner who I don't think he really cares about being insurance commissioner. He just thinks it's something he could move up the rungs for. Goes on to say, California can't afford to treat its governorship as a mere launching pad for higher office, and that's why it would have been a mistake for Harris to run. Her focus was never going to be fully on California. It was always going to be on the White House. Huh. That sounds familiar. I wonder who that reminds you of. Ultimately, the job of leading California is too complicated and consequential for its chief executive to be consumed by other ambitions. We're already dealing with the fallout of a governor who's mentally checking himself out of California and into the White House. We all know which one applies to Newsom. In a May survey, a solid 54% of Californians said the governor is more focused on his own presidential prospects than on fixing the problem in the state he leads. While voters may desire Democrats who can fight back, they also want Democrats who can competently perform the job they're elected to do. Consider the Chronicle's July poll, which found that half of San Francisco's wanted Mayor Daniel Lurie to remain focused on addressing local issues, compared to 29% who wanted him to help lead the national resistance. So there is sort of I guess you could say, a little turn here in California because of the problems that we have between homelessness and crime and unaffordability and the housing and energy and all that stuff. And I can go on and on and on. That even Democrats here in California aren't that enthused about you using the California governor's mansion as a way to springboard your way into the White House. They actually want someone who can fix problems. I know that's shocking that you want to elect politicians and governors who are actually going to, help fix problems. And Gavin Newsom hasn't done that. A lot of people think that that poll shows 54% of people think that he hasn't done that. We know he's all focused on running for the White House, even though as much as he tries to say he's not running for the White House. And I think this hurts one particular politician, which has got to be Katie Porter, who in most of her initial ads and in most of her initial press releases and videos she's put out, most of them are about her battling Trump. And if the voters here in California are saying, look, we want you to focus on local issues, not just be the Trump resistance, because that's not as important to us. Look, you being Trump resistance doesn't put food on the table, help me buy a house, help me put, gas in my car. That might be a problem for some Democrats who are solely focused on just being the resistance for President Trump, just like Katie Porter is right now. But where does that leave Kamala Harris? It basically leaves her as an irrelevant figure in politics as of this point. She had her time. She was vice president. She's not going to be governor of California. And I think much like Hillary Clinton, she's probably going to go off to get paid huge sums of money to give speeches, or maybe she won't get paid huge sums of money to give speeches because we've seen her speeches before. But regardless, she will be that figure like Hillary Clinton who will go around, give speeches, give her thoughts on some things, and try to, as she says, change things from the outside. But effectively, I can say this with all confidence, I think Kamala Harris's entire political career is over as of last week. So let me know in the comments, do you think that this is the end of Kamala Harris and her political career, and we'll never see her run for anything ever again? All right. Welcome everybody in the chat. I want to thank everyone who is tuning in. live wherever you are, whether you're on YouTube, Instagram, all those places. It seems like it's pretty active right now. Is Joe still around? I don't know where Joe is. He's probably sitting on a beach in Delaware somewhere. No one wants to hear about her Venn diagrams ever again in the history. Yeah. So her speeches are always witchcraft. Vodka School of BS. So I'm taking it from the chat. People were not fans of Kamala Harris. Is that what we're getting here? Is that they're not fans of Kamala Harris? All right, let's get to our next story of the night. The fight continues and the threats continue of Gavin Newsom redrawing all the congressional district lines here in California to jam-pack more Democrats into Congress, taking away your representatives, all because of what is happening in Texas. Is it all political posturing, or is there a case here to be made about redrawing congressional lines? Let's get into that story right now.
Texas Democrats have temporarily prevented their state's House of Representatives from redrawing their congressional map. They left the state to block a vote on the Republican-led redistricting plan. Today, the Texas State House approved a motion to issue civil arrest warrants for those Democrats who skipped the special session. So this means they could be tracked down and returned by warrant. California's Democratic leaders and state lawmakers are quickly moving to change the maps here to try to send more Democrats to Congress.
Yeah, this all happening now as one local Republican congressman is attempting to stop both Texas and California from doing any of this. And Ashley Zavala is here right now with an update on the debate that's breaking out here in California. Ash?
Golston, as Texas Democrats are holed up in other states now, California Democrats are plowing ahead with their plan to try to redraw congressional lines if Texas ends up passing their new maps. California leaders want voters this November to upend the state's independent redistricting process and allow the state's Democratic state lawmakers to draw lines for the first time in 2 decades. Voters took away that power back in 2008. It's to be seen how transparent this process will be in California. And while the ball is basically entirely in the California legislature's court, the governor is doing all of the talking. This small plane flew over Sacramento Monday with this message: mess with Texas.
Whatever they are doing will be neutered here in the state of California.
Governor Gavin Newsom gathering up support among Democrats in Congress and at the state capitol to do just that. But California's Democratic legislative leaders are not ready to talk about it on camera just yet. Assembly Speaker Robert Rivas, State Senate Pro Tem Mike McGuire, the Elections Committee chairs State Senator Sabrina Cervantes and Assemblymember Gail Pellerin denied repeated requests for interviews over the last several days. But sources tell Casey
Probably because they're still playing out the politics of this. That's my guess, is that they are not rushing to Gavin Newsom's side on this because they're still waiting to see where is this going to land with the people of California.
Following late closed-door meetings in the state Senate and Assembly Sunday night, Democratic state lawmakers appear ready to back the governor. He's directing them to quickly draw maps and write a November ballot initiative within a matter of days when they get back to Sacramento later this month. The governor says this is all in response to President Trump.
We're not drawing lines to draw lines. We're holding the line on democracy, on the rule of law, co-equal branches of government, popular sovereignty.
I don't love what's happening in Texas either.
Republican Congressman Kevin Kiley on Monday announced he's introducing a bill in Washington, D.C. to prohibit mid-decade redistricting like this nationwide. It would invalidate maps drawn between now and 2030. That includes Texas and California.
That's why I've introduced a bill that applies to every state and is designed, whether it's a red state or a blue state, to just bring some sanity to the situation here. Say, let's take a deep breath. Let's get on with the things that really matter to the country rather than spending all of this time and attention and money on redistricting when it's not supposed to be happening.
I will agree with Kevin Kiley there. I think this whole mid-decade redistricting does kind of open a can of worms that we're seeing right now. I'm not a fan of it. I think, look, it happens every 10 years. We have to see what the census says. That's how it's been done. I understand that there is an argument that Texas has gained so many more citizens that they want to account for that. But otherwise, we are getting into this kind of back and forth. issue of, well, if you're going to redistrict, then we're going to redistrict. And then every year people are just going to be redistricting. It's going to get out of hand.
Texas's maps are ready for votes. Critics have said they were drawn in a back room, proposed within days, and not given enough time for public comment. I asked the governor how on such a tight timeline it would be any different in California. How can you guarantee the process here won't be exactly the same as it was in that state?
One has nothing to do with the other. Forgive me. The ultimate test of transparency is what's in the voting pamphlet. The ultimate test of transparency is what voters will decide on. Full light of day, completely public. They will have the opportunity to review those maps. They'll have ample opportunity to do just that, and it will be in their ballot box, and they'll make that determination. That is in stark contrast.
California law.
So hypothetically, if I've never seen this before, if the election is, they actually send you the proposed maps of what it's going to look like before and after. In a state where 50% of the voters are Democrats, what do you think the chances are that they're going to look at one map and see that it got bluer than the other map and not go, yeah, absolutely, I'm going to check this box because I like bluer maps than I like red maps. So that already is deceptive in the sense that it's people are just going to vote because they want more Democrats and it's just a win for their political party. So deceptive, sure, well, it's going to be out in front. I've never seen what this election is going to look like. I've never seen them going to actually send out any sort of map of what it's going to look like. We're going to get into the language in a little bit right after this clip.
Return to Sacramento on August 18th. I'm hearing talk already that their debate and their votes on this would be wrapped up by the end of that week, basically August 22nd, so that the Secretary of State can get going on that November 4th special election.
Yeah, tight timeline.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we heard him talk about the voting pamphlets. So you were the first to report about the polling and the possible ballot question that the governor might be using here. So what they provided to lawmakers. So what are you hearing about that?
Right. At this point, my sources shared screenshots of that polling that showed 52% of California voters would approve of the ballot measure to approve the maps and temporarily change the redistricting process based on the way the governor's team has the question written, which what we have seen before getting to the maps and the change immediately declares support for the independent redistricting process. Critics say that it's probably already confusing to you. It may be confusing to voters. You can see that question and polling on our website right now on this web story. We should point out, as of this hour, Democratic state lawmakers have not seen maps yet. The governor claims he has not yet seen maps, but I am hearing that California congressional Democrats and consultants have been working on those maps for the last few days. There was talk that they may be finalized by tonight. I know that there's talk that some Democrats would like to eliminate 5 Republicans from California's congressional delegation. Others would like 7. All of this is being discussed in real time. We will keep you updated.
And as they're also trying to see exactly what's going on in Texas and trying to balance that out.
Exactly.
So it's really, yeah.
And potentially other states.
True. Yeah. Ashley, thank you.
Yeah.
Crazy. It takes the independent commission about a year or so to come out with these maps when they're redrawing these districts, because it takes a lot of time to figure out sort of the demographics and the population. And there's a lot of rules with what you have to do when you draw a district to make sure it's fair. Somehow, congressional leaders and their consultants, that's the word that really sticks out to me, is consultants, somehow have already drafted up these maps and are ready to go as of yesterday. Like, they're already ready to go. We got the maps, we're ready to go. So I guess in a couple days of what it took them, it takes a normal independent commission over a year. Now, all of a sudden, these consultants have it ready in just a matter of days. I mean, granted, let's just be honest here. These districts that they're drawing are favorable to Democrats because they're trying to eliminate Republicans. So that makes it easy. If you're kind of throwing that out the window and the 14th Amendment and all of that, the Equal Protection Clause, then sure, I guess it's easy to draw maps that favor you all day long. You don't have to worry about all that stuff. But I did put on the screen right here. So this is what she was talking about. 52% of those were polling voted yes, 41% no, and 7% undecided. So the proposed ballot initiative would say, retains California's Citizens Redistricting Commission, declares state policy supporting use of fair, nonpartisan redistricting commission nationwide, adopts new California congressional districts passed by the legislature for use in congressional elections through 2030, retains California's original congressional district maps if Texas or other states also retain their original district maps. There's a couple things I want to break down here really quickly. First off, the 52% that they're talking about right now, that's 52% right out the gate. Now, that's 52% before they even see the language, before people get really confused about this, before attack ads, and there's probably going to be tens of millions of dollars going into this. And there's this, a famous celebrity who's jumping into this we're going to get to in a second, who will be spearheading the opposition. That's really close kind of margin of error. If 52%, if you think that's overwhelming support for this, by all means, go ahead and think this is overwhelming support, but 52% is not overwhelming support, and they haven't even seen the language, they haven't seen the maps, they haven't seen the attack ads, they haven't seen sort of opposition campaigns of what they're going to do. That is a very, very close margin, but I guess, to people like Gavin Newsom, he takes that as overwhelming support. Californians overwhelmingly support this special election, and they want to do this, and they want to redraw all the district lines. The other thing about this is he talked about, well, they'll see it in the ballot language. Notice who was standing right next to Gavin Newsom during that video, right? Notice who was standing next to him. That's Attorney General Rob Bonta. Attorney General Rob Bonta is also a Trump resistance guy, completely all in on the whole Trump resistance, is spending tens of millions of dollars of taxpayer money to fight Trump and file all these lawsuits. Most of them, they seem to get either dropped or a jurisdiction or stuff like that. They don't really get out of the starting gate. But regardless, the Attorney General has a big role to play in drafting the language and the title of ballot propositions, which can make it confusing for voters. We've seen it before in the past when the Attorney General writes things a certain way. Kamala Harris was actually guilty of this with Prop 47, where she said it's the Safer Neighborhoods Act. And in reality, Prop 47 ushered in way more crime, the explosion of petty theft and crime here in California, a lot of reclassification of violent crimes down to misdemeanors. So attorney generals have this incredible power to write and deceive the voters with these ballot propositions, which is why we here on this show like to kind of sit down and go over all the propositions and talk about them. But it is very confusing. So when they say based on the language, they know if we draft this a certain way, that will make it look to all these Democratic voters that this is a Trump resistance thing. There's a good chance there's going to be a lot of people who support this, and they're not really going to know what this means or what this means as a whole or what big picture this really means. And another thing I want to talk about with this special election, there are estimates already of how much this special election is going to cost. To run a special election off year like this, it is not cheap. Let's go back to 2021 as comparison when it was the recall of Gavin Newsom. That was around $250 million to run the special election of the recall of Gavin Newsom. So they're estimating that to conduct this whole special election, it's going to be about $250, maybe $280 million to run this special election. And I want to bring this up because there are a lot of people back in the day when it was the recall talking about what a colossal waste of money this was. And I scoured the old interwebs and I found posts like this, like someone like this saying, Mrs. Betty Bauer saying, I don't want to hear from Republicans about how Democrats waste money. California's fake recall attempted power grab circus cost taxpayers $215 million. And the fake recounts to placate crybaby sore loser Donald's little feelings cost millions too. Or a tweet like this. For people who claim to care about saving the government money, California Republicans made the state spend a ton of money on a recall that is on the way to massive reaffirmation of Gavin Newsom's leadership. Or this one. This California recall election is ridiculous. Conservative candidates and their supporters complain about high taxes, but they are wasting California's money on an unnecessary recall election. The cost is estimated by officials to be nearly $280 million. And then finally, CNN piled on as well, a $276 million waste. California Democrats seek changes to the recall process after Gavin Newsom's landslide victory. So I don't want to hear it from people who were on the other side and now want to do this special election because it sticks the thumb in the eye of President Trump and Republicans, because This is a $215 million taxpayer-funded vanity project for Gavin Newsom. All right? Let's just put it out there. This is a $215 million taxpayer-funded presidential campaign ad for Gavin Newsom. That's all this is. This is him posturing himself for 2028 so that he can go out there in the primaries and he can be one of the only people who says, well, I stood up to Trump and I did this and I fought back against Trump. That's what this is. So if you're fine with using hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayer-funded money or taxpayer money to fund this vanity project and what is basically going to be a presidential campaign ad for Gavin Newsom, then I don't want to hear it about the recall election, because you got yours, we got ours, whatever. But that's what this is going to be. Let's get down to the bottom of it. This is all this is going to be. This is not really about redrawing congressional districts because it's fair or it's democracy or stuff like that. No, it's they're rigging the system to jam more Democrats into Congress. And it's also a big vanity project for Gavin Newsom so he can have a little chip on his shoulder. And the other thing about the difference between the recall and now is the recall was started by the people of California. Like it or not, it is a right granted under the California Constitution. It is something that is given to us citizens as a right under the California Constitution. Recalls, reformations, stuff like that, referendums, those are things that the California citizens are granted and protected as a right under the California Constitution. You may not like it, but citizens organized. They did the work. They got it done. They got the signatures and they made it happen. It was a bottom-up special election. This is a top-down special election. This is Gavin Newsom looking at this opportunity and trying to shove it down the throats of California citizens and making us pay for this ridiculous political posturing to happen in just a couple of months, just so he can score some political points. That's all this is. So to me, there's a big difference of a special election. If it cost $250 million and the citizens of California started it and did it, then that's their right to do so. But if Gavin Newsom is doing this and wasting taxpayer money and time so that he can use it just for his own political gain, there is a huge difference between those two things right there. And I think that is a crucial point that people have to realize, is that one was bottom up by the people of California, exercising their constitutional rights under the California Constitution. And the other is just a egomaniac, psychopath, sociopath who wants to use this for his presidential ambitions. Now, I did bring up there is going to be one celebrity, one former politician in California who is going to be spearheading all of this if this actually goes through. The old governor, Arnold Schwarzenegger, is ready to fight Newsom on redistricting. Schwarzenegger says, quote, he calls gerrymandering evil. Actually, it's a spokesperson. He calls gerrymandering evil, and he means that. He thinks it's truly evil for politicians to take power from people, said the Schwarzenegger spokesperson. He's opposed to what Texas is doing. He's opposed to the idea that California will race to the bottom to do the same thing. Now the fight has returned to his home state as Newsom aims to redraw California's U.S. House maps, since such a move would undo the constitutional language added by Schwarzenegger because he was a proponent of doing the independent commission back in 2008. This was something that voters voted on. It would require voter approval. Newsom said today he is very confident he can secure the 2/3 legislative supermajority he would need to put the question on a November special election ballot. So Schwarzenegger would be all in, which politics make strange bedfellows, because on one hand, you're not a fan of what Arnold Schwarzenegger said back during COVID and screw your freedoms. But if he's going to shoot down Gavin Newsom and his whole presidential, ambitions and stuff like that with this whole stunt, hey, who am I to turn away any sort of help we can get? So let me know in the comments what you think about this enormous waste of taxpayer money and time. And is this just political posturing of Gavin Newsom and using our taxpayer money to run this as a presidential campaign ad for him for 2028? So let me know in the comments what you think. All right. Let's see. Let's check in on the comments, how everyone's doing tonight. he should have to do a petition and get 1.5 million signatures just to put this on the ballot like we had to do to recall him. Yeah, why not? I mean, why is it different for politicians like Gavin Newsom? If he's the big supporter of it, go ahead, you know? I don't think Newsom has the money for this. The state is broke. Yeah, the state is broke. They definitely they're definitely running out of money. They run a budget deficit every single year. We can't afford to implement Prop 36, but we can afford that. Excellent point. Isn't that what they said? They only threw a couple $1 million at Prop 36 because they said, well, it's just not in the budget this year. We just don't have the money for Prop 36. But special election to redraw districts, go right ahead. 250, 280, $300 million, whatever. That's what Prop 36 was asking for, was around $300, $400 million to actually get that over the hump and actually implement all the things that, I don't know, voters voted on. But he wants to do this special election. And that's just the special election. So that's not even like the results of it. Like just to run the election is going to be 250, probably $300 million. So that's what's crazy about this. It's going to cost that money regardless of if it gets voted up or it gets voted down. So, all right, let's get to our next story. In what has become a physical embodiment of political corruption and incompetence, San Diego City Council entered a unanimous deal for 101 Ash Street in downtown San Diego. Let's get into that story.
Major step toward offloading the asbestos-laden 101 Ash Street building downtown and turn it into affordable housing.
CBS 8's Alex Cheney joins us live with what happened in council chambers late this afternoon. Alex.
Yeah, Carlo, within the last 30 minutes, I'd say, the city council unanimously approved the building project at 101 Ash Street. It'll now be turned into hundreds of affordable housing units, but not without some controversy. A new lease agreement will begin a new chapter for the infamous 101 Ash Street building downtown. It's a 21-story building originally built in 1968 and occupied by Sempra. From 2017 through 2019, the city was conducting a massive renovation and disturbed the asbestos. They had to vacate. At that time, the city was in a lease-to-own agreement with the owner, Sistera. After years of litigation, the city agreed to buy out the lease for $86 million in 2022. Opponents of the lease say the city didn't do its due diligence.
It seems like you learned nothing from the past. Prior failure to demand a building inspection allowed an asbestos-laden boondoggle to become a city asset.
The developer, 101 Ash Venture, plans to repurpose the building into 247 affordable housing units, a mix of studios, 1, 2, and 3-bedroom units, also retail and childcare space.
Because this project has the 101 Ash label on it and that there will be cameras here, they are here to oppose because they're constantly rooting against the city and, quite frankly, don't ever want to see us move forward.
The lease with this.
Sean Elo Rivera might be one of the most condescending politicians I'm aware of in California. There's a lot of condescending politicians in California, but for someone who is just a city council president, he's got a lot of gall to talk down to citizens the way he does. He talks like a tough guy. He talks like a tough guy, like he knows what he's doing or whatever. But for him to kind of chastise concerned citizens who were like, wait a second, what's this deal you're entering into for 101 Ash Street? Now, let me give you a little background about 101 Ash Street. It's where City Hall is in San Diego. So when you go to San Diego, I know a lot of people think it's that nice, big, beautiful building right there on the harbor. That's actually the county building. That's different than City Hall. City Hall is farther in downtown. So it's this big sort of brutalist, ugly building that's been there since the 60s. It's been plagued with problems, which we're going to get into. And they can't figure out what to do with it and why they're spending so much money on it. So Sean Elo Rivera is saying, you're just all here because you hate change. That's the whole thing. You hate change. Well, I mean, if change isn't always necessarily good, you could be changing and approving a bad deal. So God forbid, citizens show up and have any sort of concerns about this.
It would be $45.6 million paid over 60 years, with base rent starting at $15,000 per year. The developer says it will cost about $40 million to clean the building of asbestos. The funding for the roughly $267 million project is expected to come partially from city loans and historic tax credits.
The development team now taking over the lease wants construction to start by this coming spring. Reporting live from the City Council chambers, I'm Alex Cheney, CBS 8.
So I want to break down a couple of the numbers here on 101 Ash Street. And again, this is a building that has been plagued with issue and corruption basically since the city has taken it over. It used to be, was it SDG&E, then it was Sempra, then now it's the city who bought it. The 101 Ash Street it's not going to be, so this whole project's not going to be directly funded. I want to get that right out of the way. It's not going to be directly funded with taxpayer money. That doesn't mean that taxpayers won't be on the hook somehow. So what they're doing is they're entering into this 60-year ground lease with MRK Partners and Create Dev, and we're going to get into those shady businesses in just a couple minutes. They will be getting funding, and they're going to get competitive federal and state tax credits. So remember, a tax credit means they're not collecting taxes on something. So where do they pick up the slack? In San Diego and the state are already in budget deficits, $280-300 million budget deficit here in San Diego alone. There's affordable housing tax credits. The city is providing a $46.5 million seller's note. So we are giving money to them in form of a seller's note, a loan based on a building's value with a 4% interest, which the developers will only have to start repaying around year 15. Is that what they're expecting? Is how long it's going to take for them to actually do anything with this building? Is it going to take 15 years to do that? That's a long runway to figure out how to change what's going on in 101 Ash Street. At this point, it's almost like you should just kind of tear it down. It's just such an enormous disaster. The city will be receiving 50% of rental proceeds minus expenses, generating an estimated $90 million over the lease term. Remember, that's $60 million over. That's $90 million over 60 years. That's the lease term. So, another thing, after possession in 2017, a $32 million renovation began. Which found out, and they disturbed a whole bunch of asbestos, and then there was a lawsuit because they were exposed to asbestos. It has remained vacant ever since, costing taxpayers about $6,575 daily, $255 million annually for maintenance. Another thing regarding political corruption, a city real estate advisor, Jason Hughes, who was found to have earned $9.4 million without disclosing his role in the renovation, pled guilty to a misdemeanor conflict of interest charge and had to repay the funds. Now, I want to go back to this MRK and Create Dev. As I said, if this is not the physical embodiment of political corruption and incompetence here in San Diego, this might be the absolute perfect example right here. So City Council hands over Ash Street. This is from OB Rag. It's a small online news site. Ocean Beach, that's a small neighborhood, a beach community here in San Diego. It says City Council hands over Ash Street Tower to development team of Kelly Moden, who happens to be the chair of the San Diego Planning Commission. So she's involved in politics and government. Oh, and she happens to be the president of MRK and Create Dev LLC, who just got this enormous contract. So on July 19th, a vote by the San Diego City Council, a unanimous one, crystallized the city handing over, described it as asbestos-plagued office tower of 101 Ash Street for a 60-year lease to a development team headed by none other than Kelly Moden, the chair of the city. Not only is she on it, she's the chair of the city's planning commission. She heads MRK Partners and Create Dev LLC. Moden gushed, quote, "Today's council approval gives us the green light to transform a city-owned liability into a legacy. We are honored to have the trust and confidence of the San Diego City Council as we turn our attention to meeting September's state and federal affordable housing deadlines, which will keep our timeline and financing moving forward." The report goes on to say, Moden stands to collect a portion of the $32.7 million developer fee. The fee is calculated using a state formula for the low-income housing credit tax program, which allows the developer to take home 15% of the eligible basis. Eligible basis is the total amount of project costs eligible for generating tax credits. The development team will pocket nearly $3.8 million upfront and collect the rest when the project is refinanced. Quote, the chairperson of the City Planning Commission is perpetuating a fraud on the people of San Diego. She has a prohibited financial interest. Mike Aguirre, who is a lawyer here, I'm going to have to go back into court because this is fraud. And then the San Diego's Ethics Commission, shockingly, said there's no conflict of interest because the project did not go before the Planning Commission. I don't know how you don't look at that and go, someone who's on the Planning Commission who's involved in government also is the president of these construction companies that just happen to get this huge contract for a big building. She's going to pocket millions of dollars. No one thinks that's fishy at all. No one thinks that's crazy. And then you have people like Sean Elo Rivera have the gall to talk down to citizens who are concerned about this deal. For him to act like he's this big tough guy and chastise citizens for exercising their right to free speech. For him, oh, they just hate change. That's why they're here. That's what they talk down about. That we're not allowed to be concerned about why we're handing out these nice little contracts to people who are involved in San Diego government. And just as sort of another, this is her LinkedIn, Kelly Moden, President and Create Development, City of San Diego. She puts it right there. City of San Diego, Planning Commissioner, UCSD lecturer. So you at 101 Ash Street, San Diego politics. This is the problem when it's a 100% Democrat city council and there's no one to check each other. Todd Gloria obviously has no gall to stand up to this or call this out. Sean Elo Rivera has the gall to talk down to citizens who are concerned about this. But this is just sort of a small microcosm at the San Diego level of political corruption and incompetence. First, they were incompetent in buying the building and managing it and maintaining the building. They couldn't figure out how to do what they had to do with this building. And now they're handing it over to a development company and a construction company that has connections to the San Diego city government. And everyone shrugs their shoulders and goes, this is fine. This is not corruption at all in San Diego city government. So let me know in the comments what you think. Do you think this is absolute corruption on the part of the San Diego City Council and the city government, that they're just handing this huge project over and someone who's involved in government set to make millions and millions of dollars? I don't know. I think it's kind of a conflict of interest that you're even on the Planning Commission when you own two development companies. But what do I know? I guess they know better than me, according to Sean Elo Rivera. I just hate change. All right. Let's see. Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Someone said I used to work there. Full of asbestos, deep pockets, and no change. Yep. I've heard about it ever since I've moved to San Diego. It's all you bring up 101 Ash Street, and it's like it becomes like this whole controversial thing about 101 Ash Street, and it is controversial. As you can see, there's a lot of things going on with 101 Ash Street. All right, last story of the night, and then I'll finish up with your chats. So if you have any questions or kind of questions you want to talk about California politics, we can get into that in the chat in a second. So LA voters might veto the 2028 Olympics in Los Angeles based on a ballot measure that's coming up for a vote. I want to bring up this story. This is from the LA Times. So proposed ballot measure could force a citywide vote on LA 2028 Olympic venues. City officials fear the proposal, if it reaches the ballot and voters approve it, would force elections on several 2028 Olympic venues. LA's plan to host the 2028 Olympic and Paralympic Games was already facing a thorny set of challenges, including the scramble to secure lucrative sponsorships and the search for buses to shuttle athletes and spectators across the region. Now organizers could soon be faced with yet another threat, a proposed ballot measure that, according to city officials, could force at least 5 Olympic venues to go before voters for approval. Unite Here Local 11, which represents hotel and restaurant workers, filed paperwork in June for a ballot measure requiring LA voters to sign off on the development or expansion of major event centers such as sports arenas, concert halls, hotels, and convention facilities. The measure takes aim not just at permanent projects, but also temporary structures, including those that add more than 50,000 square feet of space or 1,000 seats. Quote, the proposed measure would make vital projects essential for our city in these games potentially impossible to complete. Krikorian said in a statement to the Times they would also require costly special elections before even relatively small projects could begin. Unite Here has built a proposal as one of the responses to a business group that is seeking to overturn the so-called Olympic wage passed by the city council in May, which hikes the minimum wage for hotel and airport workers up to $30 an hour in 2028. $30 an hour for hotel and airport workers in Los Angeles by 2028. If you have no idea what that's going to do to business overall for Los Angeles, forget the Olympics, because you'll have a bump for the Olympics if it actually goes through and it isn't a complete calamity. But what happens after the Olympics are over and all these hotel stuff to pay everyone $30 an hour, or airport has to pay everyone $30 an hour? It's not going to go well. That's what I can tell you right now. $30 an hour is an astronomically high minimum wage. It says voters should have been given the opportunity to decide whether LA should host the Olympics from the very beginning, said Eric Sheehan, spokesperson for No Olympics, which opposes the 2028 games. Nevertheless, Sheehan voiced little enthusiasm for the union proposal, saying it doesn't go far enough. What would be stronger would be the chance for Angelenos to vote on whether or not we want the Olympics at all, he said. So this proposal, if it goes before the voters, has to approve all these different venues that are going to be happening in preparation for the 2020 Olympics or 2028 Olympics. And if they vote a lot of this down, it might be impossible to actually host the Olympics in Los Angeles. I did want to take a quick look at a video from this No Olympics, because they lay out sort of the myths that are surrounding it, why they sell the Olympics, why cities should have the Olympics. But I want to take a quick look at this clip from No Olympics.
The LA 2028 Organizing Committee wants you to think that another Olympic Games will be good for the city of LA. But unfortunately, their argument rests on some shaky myths about Los Angeles and its relationship to the Olympics. Myth number 1. The 1984 Olympics were successful. No. The 84 Games led directly to the militarization of the LAPD. LA Police Chief Daryl Gates oversaw the jailing of thousands of young Black and Latinx men in the infamous Olympic gang sweeps. Gates also sent the LA SWAT team to Israel and West Berlin for special training. Myth number 2. The Olympics would give LA much-needed transit expansion. No. LA will expand transit no matter what through the funds raised from Measure M and federal grants. Only 2 projects will be accelerated for the Olympics: the Purple Line to Westwood and the LAX Connector. Projects like the Vermont Corridor Rapid Transit Line, which serves South LA, won't be prioritized, even though it is the second busiest corridor in all of LA County. Myth number 3. The LA Olympics are low risk. No, they're a high risk for human rights violations, as the Games will be designated a national special security event, putting the LAPD under the jurisdiction of the Department of Homeland Security and limiting many of our constitutional rights. They're also a...
Well, we can't have that. We can't have, anything related to President Trump. We can't have that.
Risk financially. On average, the Olympics goes over budget by 156%. Myth number 4. 88% of people in Los Angeles support the bid. No, that figure comes from a single poll taken in early 2016, almost 2 years ago. A similar poll taken before the 1984 Games showed 70% supported the bid in general, but that number dropped to 35% if taxpayers had to share the costs. LA residents have not been polled yet about the taxpayer guarantee or any other specific aspects of the bid. Myth number 5. Angelenos won't fight back because they're not politically active. No. Los Angeles has a rich history of political activism and resistance.
As we just saw about a month ago, they are very politically active, almost to the point of overactive and destructive.
Home to the Chicanics movement and...
Chicanics movement. Gives you an idea of who's running this organization.
The Japanese American reparations movement, among countless other struggles. And the work continues today as Angelenos are fighting for rent control, accountability and transparency in local politics, infrastructure in working class communities, immigrants' rights, climate justice, decriminalization of poverty, and justice for all people. So don't let the LA 2028 Organizing Committee fool you. The Olympics were a human rights disaster in '84. And if we give up the right to our city to corrupt oligarchs and politicians, history will repeat itself. So tell your neighbors and join us.
All right. There's some of the myths. Someone in the chat said I never heard called that before. I've never heard the term Chicanx. That's a new one for me. So those are some of the myths about sort of the how they sell the Olympics, and it's not always a win-win for the entire city. I had to look it up and I had to do some research, and I was wondering if there was ever any city that had if there was sort of a precedent for a city to lose the Olympics. Like they were deemed to get the Olympics or were supposed to host the Olympics, and then they lost it because of certain things. I took out all the ones that had to do with like World War I and World War II, because a lot of them had to do with like they were being hosted in Europe, and it was World War I, then it was World War II. There was another one that was like around 1940 in Japan. There was a lot of issues there with the Chinese and Japanese battles going back and forth. And then there was supposed to be Moscow, which was the Cold War. So take those out because that's war. I wanted to see if there was any place that had ever lost it because of any sort of internal strife or the city couldn't handle it. And it turns out there was. In 1976, Denver was supposed to be hosting the 1976 Olympics. In 1970, the International Olympic Committee chose Denver to be the host of the Winter Olympic Games. Initial Colorado sites chosen for the games include University of Denver, Denver Mountain Park, blah, 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 blah. On November 7, 1972, Colorado voters concerned about the financial burden and environmental impact of the Olympic Games on their state rejected a $5 million bond issue that would fund the event. Shortly thereafter, Innsbruck, Austria replaced Denver as the host of the 1976 Winter Olympics. So there you have it. There is an example of what happens if voters get involved and all of a sudden say, whoa, hold on a sec. We don't approve this. We don't approve you building this or building that or using taxpayer money or whatever that we have to do and put up with all this and make it impossible for them to actually host the Olympic Games. So when I say that LA voters could actually veto the LA Olympics, there is a possibility that LA voters could do this. And I think there is more of a possibility, especially now when you think of what's going on with Karen Bass and the wildfires and homelessness and all of this stuff that's happening in Los Angeles. You kind of sit back and wonder, are they going to punish their administration and City Hall and Karen Bass for how badly they've managed Los Angeles, especially this ballot measure coming up soon? Does it show that voters might punish her and say, you're not going to get the Olympics? You can't handle the wildfires. You can't handle homelessness. You can't handle crime. You can't handle all this stuff. Yet you want us to bail you out on the Olympics and give you all of this stuff just so you can host the Olympics here in 2028. I think there is a real possibility that voters could punish Karen Bass and the rest of City Hall up in Los Angeles and make it impossible that they don't have the Olympics in Los Angeles in 2028. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think that there is a possibility that voters in LA actually veto the Olympics by making it nearly impossible to host the Olympics in Los Angeles? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Okay. Last round question. We got a couple minutes left. Thanks everyone for tuning in live wherever you are: YouTube, Instagram, Rumble, Twitch, anywhere. Oh, that was the other point about that Kelly Moden, is that as of this year, she couldn't even keep her company up to date. So, and this is who they're awarding big contracts to, is someone who couldn't even keep her company current. Excuse me. Thank you everyone for tuning in. It's a hot one out there. We're hitting those dog days of summer right now. So, all right. All right. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Wherever you are live, there's a good chance that LA will be on fire in 2028. anyway, so it doesn't sound pretty safe. I mean, if they don't fix anything, who knows? It could be a bad situation going on in LA. It seems like there's a lot of bad situations going on. We've reported and talked a lot about LA this year. Like, LA has just given us a ton of content to talk about. LA is just continually pumping out stories that we can talk about on this show. And speaking of this show, thank you everyone for tuning in. One way you can help support the show is make sure you subscribe, like, share, review, all of that stuff. If you haven't subscribed already, that helps us with the algorithm, helps people find us. You can support us by going to CaliforniaUnderground.live, and you can get this cool shirt like this. It says "Stop Brownouts," and then the bottom it says "Support Nuclear," because I think we need more nuclear power in California, especially now with all the heat going on, and I'm sure we're going to get brownout warnings. I think it's like a hot heat wave coming through Southern California. It's getting like the high hundreds, or like not the high hundreds. We're going to get up into like the 100 here, even in San Diego County. Like inland is going to get up to 100. So, you know, I fully expect like a brownout and electrical issues are going to be coming up. So you can do that. And also the 100% free way that you can support the show is just let someone know about the show and let them know who would probably get a kick out of this and would find it very entertaining or informative. That's the best way to help the show that is 100% free. So with that said, we'll see you all on the next one. Later.